I guess the question we're going to have to ask ourselves over the next 4 years is, will the suffering of others be enough for the people who voted for this train wreck? Will the suffering of others be enough when the suffering comes to them? Will their glee that the others will be punished? Will that get them through the hard times that are predictably coming, of which they themselves will be harmed by? And do you think they'll learn? I guess that, for me, that the question. And here to share some thoughts on, well, this circus of appointments or nominations. As my good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, how the heck are you?
So that, for me, is the question. We're going to see a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and I keep saying the solutions will be in the savagery. All of the horrible that we're going to see over the next 4 years. Hopefully, we will find the solutions to those things. But I've been asking that question of my red hat friends. Is your hatred of others so great that when it hurts you, you'll be okay with it? And I've gotten mixed reviews.
Yeah, I feel like this is something where the redhead folks, are probably less likely to want to enact their revenge if they're being so harmed that their bananas are $20 or $30 or whatever. Um,
Or if
I
they got
do,
to go out there and pick lettuce themselves.
right? Yeah, I mean, the people are going to have to start growing their own, you know, Trump tariff gardens in the backyard and figuring out how to, create grow their own lettuce and their own veg and whatnot. So, um, I think that, especially when you start looking at we're going into this whole fight over the budget, and so at the very beginning of the Trump administration, they're going to have a big budget fight, and it's it's going to be crazy because part of what will go into that will be the mass deportations and all of these things that are on Trump's agenda, because the only way they can pass that is through a budget reconciliation process. So I think you're going to start to see stuff happening very quickly that is going to start costing folks a lot of money. And we have this idea of, oh, this whole tariff thing is going to take a while because it's got to go through Congress and yada yada. But there's this sort of battle over it because Trump did it unilaterally in 2018 with the steel tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs. So I keep thinking, like, this may happen very quickly.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
And
I agreed with the steel and aluminum tariffs. I think tariffs are not an entirely bad thing. I think they're a strategic tool like anything else. This kind of broad brushing, this kind of everything, this is bad. But I do think the tariffs, because I know where this leads us to, where we completely bastardize the whole idea of tariffs, when in the national interest, in our economic interest, they can be good, just not in this fashion, is how I'm looking at it. Or do you disagree?
no, I agree. And I think this idea of just revenge tariffs, where he wants to institute a 20% tariff increase for Mexico, which again means that either we're going to have to find somewhere else to get a lot of our fruits and vegetables, or um, I don't know how this works. I mean, I guess we can start getting bananas from other um, Central American countries, maybe. I'm not really sure. I
Or we
keep
just don't
saying
need bananas.
bananas, but
Or we just don't
it's
have
not going to be
bananas.
just bananas. It's going to be everything.
Or avocados, because
Right.
my daughter and I were shopping, and I go, hey, look, avocados from Mexico. It says right on there.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, yeah, maybe I should get some, because they're probably never going to go, because they're probably going to go away.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, I mean, there's this idea that, we're going to set up these huge barriers, and these things, these unintended consequences that I think a lot of voters didn't think about, well, they may come home to roost. And again, I come back to, the solutions will be in the suffering.
Yeah. And I think I really do believe that folks are going to suffer so much that they'll want things to change. Um, I mean, I think it depends, frankly, on how long it takes to go into effect, because I've heard a couple of Trump's people say that they were going to try and do this gradually. Like, they're going to institute a 20% tax, but it's not going to be all at once. It's going to be like, over several years or something like that, that may be the way that um, it comes in and it isn't such a shock to the system. And if they do it that way, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if people will, get as bent out of shape about it. But I think, we've got 2 years until the next election. And the whole conversation last election was about grocery prices, right? Like everybody kept asking about the price of eggs and, stuff like that. So if we come up in 2 years and gas prices are higher and egg prices are higher and groceries are higher, I think that's going to be a huge part of the conversation where it's like, we tried to tell you that Trump was going to be bad for this, but none of you listened.
Yeah, no, because look, January 21st, I'm told gas prices are going to be 99 cents a gallon, eggs too. January 21st, I'm waiting for it. Look, I would love to have dollar gas. I would love to have a dozen eggs for a buck. Hasn't happened in my lifetime. Well, what's it been 30 years since that's been that way? But hey, we've set a bar, and let's see where they get near it.
I was going to say, I remember during the Clinton years, which is when I got my first car, and I paid 97 cents for diesel because I had this Mercedes that was older than me. It was one of those old diesel Mercedes, and it was a tank, right? But I had cheap diesel, so thank you, Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, you can't give him any credit for anything.
I
But
know.
what's interesting to me is I'm watching, and look, I'm not a huge Clinton fan, to be honest with you at all. But
Speaking of trade
yeah,
and screwing workers,
because here's the question though: does this not break up the NAFTA slash UMCA? I mean, because isn't having
yes,
open trade part of this? So by slapping tariffs, and we did this on Canadian soft lumber, which has raised the price of lumber, hurt home building prices, a whole bunch of this, because this is what Trump wanted. Isn't this how we end up getting out of NAFTA? Which I got to be honest with you, I'm not entirely against.
well, the theory of USMCA was that that was the new NAFTA that was going to, replace NAFTA. And Trump supposedly, negotiated this whole thing. And now he's essentially throwing that away, which I think is why you've got, Mexico and Canada saying, if you're going to institute tariffs on us, we're slapping them on you too. So good luck with that.
And look, this kind of global trade war,
Hmm.
and understand, I'm not against the idea of reshoring manufacturing, and I'm a huge proponent of domestic production for domestic consumption, but you can't do that overnight. That
Yeah.
takes a process, a long process, the kind of long process that this country will, in my lifetime, never put up with.
Yeah. I suggest everybody get chickens.
Chickens, okay. Not against it. I know people who have chickens that run around all over the place. They're good for mosquitoes, I guess, right?
I actually have no idea, but they're really good for eggs, for sheep eggs.
Very good. Cheap
They're
egg.
great for omelets.
So let's talk about the nominations. Kash Patel for FBI director. That's going to be fun and interesting.
You know, I just feel like Kash Patel leading any kind of position that high up in intelligence is going to be a giant shredder truck outside the building, right? Like I have this weird idea in my head that his entire purpose is to completely destroy any evidence against Donald Trump and um,
Or
and
him.
and yeah, well, and him too, but also to institute the revenge campaign. And I don't know what that looks like when there's no real evidence that anybody committed a crime other than I guess he makes it up. And that generally doesn't help people, I think, in in trying to go after somebody. We've talked about this before where it could just very well be that it's going to be a fight to cost people a whole lot of money. But the kind of things that the president does, he's been given immunity. Does that mean that that extends to Kash Patel? I don't think it does. So, I mean, if Democrats come back by some miracle and win in 2028, does that mean that a bunch of Trump people are going to end up being indicted for some of the stuff that they do that was clearly illegal?
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because even this process is really, really early. I mean, don't these nominations usually come out right around Christmas when everyone else when they're thinking about shopping, where we're not, where we don't even really know who they are yet until you look in the middle of January? Isn't this really early?
Yeah, that's been the interesting thing about this, and I think that's how we know that a lot of these appointments are, either favors or promises. Typically, what happens is, the transition team chooses who they want, and then they start the process of an FBI background check. You wanna know everything about the person that they've done, good or bad, so that you know what's coming.
Sure.
Right. If there's a huge fight in the Senate or a huge fight in the press, you want to know what that is so you have an answer for a lot
Right.
of that stuff.
So, like,
Or, you know,
if there was a nominee who paid off for an affair that he had with a married woman, you know, who claims that he abused her, you could know that earlier,
right.
and it wouldn't just
And
come out in the press.
in this case, Trump's transition has said that they're going to vet their own people. But I think, for a lot of these folks, we read about Pete Hegseth in particular, where the transition team said that they were completely blindsided by the rape allegation that he had that was filed and the whole non-disclosure agreement, and I mean, like, a lot of things about him that would have turned up in an actual
Right.
background check, whether it was the FBI or not. So I think what's happening with these nominees is Trump is just sort of throwing them out there and announcing them on Truth Social, and they haven't had any kind of vetting whatsoever.
Right. So, to the Hegstaff thing, maybe we'd have known that his mother thought he was a horrible person to women as well. Maybe that would have been found out. But here, maybe, and this is where I hope everyone's sitting down. Maybe this is the genius of Donald J. Trump. Maybe the genius is I've got to do all these favors. I've got all this payback stuff. I got to do all of this posturing and all of the, all this stuff. I've got to throw this out there so that the base goes, oh, he did what he said. He's going after the deep state, and he just throws them out there, and they sink or swim on their own. And some of them are not great people. Like a guy whose own mother says he's not good for women. So that maybe they do sink, and he can go, yeah, I tried. Thoughts?
No, it may very well be that. It may be that he just doesn't care and he thinks that he owns the Republican Party enough to be able to push through a lot of these people, with Hegseth in particular. Um, I think that the interesting thing that I've heard people say about Hegseth is, the military doesn't have a wokeness problem, but it really does have a sexual assault problem. So to have somebody who has these allegations, who paid somebody off, who made her sign an NDA, that it doesn't look really good. And chances are that that person is going to be brought into the Senate to testify against him. And so, I mean, you think about folks like this and what this looks like in the press, and the whole purpose of Pete Hegseth, paying her off and having her sign an NDA was so that he's made it clear the goal was to not get fired at Fox. And so you're like, bro, you completely screwed your position in the cabinet, and now you're screwing yourself at Fox. And so I'm wondering, you know, uh, really, what was the purpose for all of this? Why would he, as an individual, say, yes, I want this, I'm going to accept whatever, huge cabinet post that you give me? So I mean, it may very well be that Trump's just an idiot and he doesn't know any better, or I don't think that he's some 4D chess player or something like that. But these nominees should have been smarter, especially somebody who works in the media.
Yeah.
Like, come on, bro.
No, look, I think your first part is right, that he's the thought process was, we're just going to steamroll everything, and
Yeah.
we're not doing background checks. There'll be none of this out there. If I can cover my tracks long enough, it won't matter. And look, I don't even think that's gonna torpedo his nomination, because I just think the Republican Party is that weak-kneed. I don't know. I know I have a lot of people saying, "Oh, there's gonna be a couple Republicans who are gonna thwart this." I don't know, because you brought up the woman who signed the NDA. As soon as she comes to testify in front of Congress, that woman's life is over Because I think of that Christine Blasey Ford who
Right.
had to go into hiding, hire security, her family had to move. They had to do all this stuff because these crazy red hats, the extremists who are the cult part of Trump's support, they will not let her alone or any of these people alone.
So one of the main differences that I think about with Christine Blasey Ford and the woman who accused Hegseth is that the woman immediately went to the police. She had a rape kit done. Um, there was semen found in her. um, Chances are they have all of that information and all of that DNA, and so that to me says a lot more. And the fact that he paid her off, like this wasn't something where Christine Blasey Ford made these accusations, you know, decades later
Yeah,
after the fact.
you still think they care. That's so cute.
Part of me still believes in the system of justice,
Oh,
just not
how
very much of
cute!
it.
How cute!
I know, right?
There's justice. If there's
A little
justice,
bit.
there's justice for poor people. They
Right.
don't get justice; they get brought to justice. And I look at this, obviously today, Jack Smith was supposed to do his due today. All charges dropped with what was the word with prejudice?
Yeah,
Without
so
prejudice. Or,
the deadline is Monday for Jack Smith to file his, final stuff and make any requests for Judge Tanya Chutkin on the cases. And he actually filed some stuff last week, early. And so I've been curious, like what else he's going to talk about. If is he going to promise that there's going to be a huge report, stuff like that. So what he asked for was he's dismissing this stuff without prejudice, which means that again, if the Democrats by some miracle win the White House in 2028, then a new attorney general could reignite these cases unless Donald Trump pardons himself. The thing about Trump pardoning himself is he's going to have to admit to all of the crimes that he committed.
yeah,
Because if he has not been pardoned for those crimes, like if he pardons himself for stealing the classified documents but not obstructing justice, right? Then you can come back and indict him for obstructing justice. So he's got to make that admission for everything that he has done, and that has to be public. And he has, I mean, he's basically admitting I did all of this stuff so that he could then have a pardon.
he can't just say
So
I absolve myself of all sins.
no.
Like when I went to Catholic school, you used to go and you'd ask, you do confession and they would absolve you of your sins, couple Hail Marys. You were done. You were good. You're slate clean.
Right. 10 Our Fathers and 5 Bloody Marys.
No, they never gave those out. Those are for the priests.
Right.
That's not nice. So, but here's my problem. And again, this comes back to the fact that there's justice for some people are brought to justice and well, others aren't. And understand, look, I had a conversation with a red hat who was, I don't care about the classified documents and all of this stuff. And his response to me bringing this up was, but Hillary. And that's always going to be the response from the right. Now, I'm not saying you don't pursue, but it's but Hillary. And how do you get around that?
I mean, I think to some extent when there are two different things here where it's the politics argument and then it's the justice argument, the legal argument. And with the red hats, we've talked about this before where it's like you're never going to change their mind.
Oh,
Like there's 33% of the country that will never ever ever believe anything that comes from the Democratic Party or from, anyone that's not Donald Trump. And I think what we're seeing specifically with Jack Smith is he is still moving forward with the classified documents case. He's just removed Trump from it. So right now, the classified documents case is being appealed to the 11th Circuit because, the Trump BFF judge dismissed it under the guise that Jack Smith was improperly appointed as a special counsel. And so the Justice Department itself has to fight that if they ever want any kind of special counsel ever again. That means even for Hunter Biden, right? If they want to go after Joe Biden or Hunter Biden, whenever Trump gets in office, then they're going to have to do it with a special counsel. And I mean, I guess they don't have to. They could just blow it all up and be like, no, we're intentionally going after them as the DOJ. Um, but but to maintain the legitimacy of any special counsel in the future, they have to have this move through the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and have the 11th Circuit decide on it. So Trump may very well come back and pardon Carlos de Oliveira and Walt Nauta, and say that, you know, their obstructions of justice are fine. But again, it's like, is it going to happen before the 20th? I would really hope that the 11th Circuit steps out and says, you know, actually, no, this was legally, Jack Smith was legally appointed the way that he should have been, and these are going to move through, and then Trump will pardon them from there.
We'll see, and that's why I find this all very interesting. As someone told me, we're getting what we deserve.
Yeah, and I would say too, like anybody who has jury duty in the future, I would make an excuse that you don't believe in justice anymore because of Donald Trump. That may get you out of it.
That might get you out of it. There you go. If you're looking for a way. Sarah, as always, great stuff. I appreciate the work. Keep it up. Make sure you check out Sarah's work, rawstory.com. Sarah, thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Have a good week, everyone.
I want to hear your thoughts. Is this what we earned? All those people who stayed home? It's on you.